All right, welcome to another edition of RSG Live at the Lounge. I've been waiting for this conversation for a long time. I'm just gonna put it like that. I have my little bucket list when I kind of wrote some names down on this series, and this name came on right away. It was early. It was early because of just I think it captured what we want the essence of this conversation to be all about. Our guest tonight played for the Virginia Cavaliers in the late 80s, was part of that run. And I'm going to say Dawn Staley played with her because she was a youngin coming to the team. I got to do it properly. Played with her on that squad. But at a time when I was watching a lot of college basketball, especially women's basketball, I was in it, checking it out, and to know that she was part of that journey. She went on to play a short stint professionally in Germany before she took on a position with Coca-Cola as a territorial manager. She's been an assistant coach for Kentucky, Penn State, and Wisconsin. And then she took on some high-level positions in higher ed at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She was special assistant to the chancellor, where she directed the director of community relations. That's how we met in that role. And then she went on to become the associate dean for external relations for the School of Education. And then after that, she went and became the assistant state superintendent in the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction before her current role as a secretary for the safety and professional services for the state of Wisconsin. She was appointed by Governor Tony Evers. So this has just been like, we're not even talking about the fact she's a parent. She is a wife. She is a community organ. Like, you're talking about somebody who does everything. I'm welcome to the lounge, my friend, Secretary Dawn Crim. How you doing, Dawn?
I'm doing well. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, it was hard for me when I looked at that. And I'm going to say this. I think you finished your PhD. So I talked to her about getting her PhD while I was working on mine. I still need to finish, and she came to finish that. With all that she's doing, I just feel like I'm incomplete right now. I feel like I need to go back to, I got to do some personal work right now, Dawn. You're making me, I'm just like, is there anything you're not doing? You just checking all the boxes. I didn't even put down there like the work that you've done to consult with youth athletes and parents and folks to prepare for recruitment, all these things and all the community work. So you've done a lot of work. But we want to start with the origin story because we got to go back. Because this is a sports thing. We will go back to the game. We go back to, whether or not basketball found you or you found basketball, but, it started somewhere. Walk us through those early years as you start to get into playing basketball. What it was like. How did you start playing the game?
So I will share with you, I actually am a 3-sport athlete. So I was volleyball and softball too. And I even contemplated going to college on a volleyball scholarship.
Oh my goodness.
But basketball won out.
Oh.
So I grew up in Philly, and people have been balling in Philly for years. Everybody got a playground, and I have 3 brothers. And so 2 of my brothers play as well. They never played, organized. It was just, in the community, like most people.
Yes.
And, I follow them, and they be like, I don't know, but they let me come. And so what happened was I didn't follow them anymore. I would just take the ball and go myself. And what was cool was, the neighborhood was cool with it. So, I was the one playing basketball when we played football. I played football, not like organized, but just, in the neighborhood. Baseball. I really love sports. My mom was, she was athletic growing up. They have organized sports when she came through, but she encouraged it. And it was just something I really loved doing. I watched football with my dad. So I was the tomboy. I was the one that in the neighborhood, people was like, oh, what's up, Dawn? I was like, what's up? So I was in. And so I actually started playing in 5th grade.
Okay.
And I was the first girl because there were no girls playing at FS Edmonds.
Yep.
And so I tried out, and it was one of those teams where whoever wants to play can play. So that's where it started.
I want to get back to that 5th grade because you said you were the first one to play, and like we are in similar ages. We're very close, and I was I started playing in 5th grade, and my 5th grade team was co-ed because I don't remember if they had even basketball. If you were a girl playing at that time, you actually had to play with the guys. And so on my team, we had three. We had Rosie Freeman, we had my cousin Sharon, and we had Retina Page. And I was telling you before, my cousin Sharon was the enforcer. You know, there was nothing happening in the lane. There were no free layups in the lane, and she was not letting anything. She was Rick Mahorning everybody back then, and I loved it. We used to get it there, but it was a free flow. So that was my socialization into it. You know, we played pickup. I played pickup with Rosie, and so that was the place. And I didn't even think about it back then that was happening because there was no other option. You know, I didn't really even think about that there were other teams until we got to junior high school, where because that's just how we got socialized in it. So for you to walk into the gym in that space, you had already been establishing yourself on the playground then when you came and played. So you were taking minutes.
You know, it was fifth grade, so you know the minutes were shareable. You know, nobody was really covered in minutes when you did it at school. Now, when you were on the playground, that was a little bit different. You know, you had to get next. You had to get in where you fit in.
Yeah.
But in school, you know, they were a little more open.
So at what point did you know, okay, I'm going to be a Division I athlete? Like, when was that when you knew that your trajectory was going to lead to somewhere like Virginia?
You know, it's one of those things. I can't really point to the moment. I just loved playing. And what was cool was there was a group of us that played together in sixth grade that went all the way through high school. And so that's what we did. So we went to volleyball, we went to basketball, we went to softball. Two of the coaches were the same in middle school, and it was the same coach in high school. But that's just what you did. You just and so we had a core group. We played pickup on the weekends. It was before all the AAU stuff.
Yes.
AAU stuff didn't really happen until about my sophomore, junior year. And I actually had the opportunity to play with the Philadelphia Bells, which was Mike Flynn, which was like big time AAU basketball. But that was all suburban white girls. Yes. And so I was the city girl that played with them. And then my junior year, I pivoted to a different AAU team. And on that AAU team with Kurt, that's when I met Dawn. And so Dawn, I met when she was in ninth grade. Yeah. Well, actually eighth grade, because I was a junior. And then my senior year, she was ninth grade. So we ended up playing together, and that's how we got to know each other. But we lived in different parts of the city. Yes. So, you know, cities, you know, it's big. So aside from playing with our high school teams, AAU ball happened in high school. We then would see each other. But when you're just going to play pickup or going to do stuff, every neighborhood got courts. Yes. So I wasn't going where she lived. I was up there in my own community.
Yeah. And what's so interesting about how you described it, this is the power of social media. So I was just on Facebook with our former coach. He did everything for youth sports, Rusty Fuller. And he created this page, and he had all these old lineup cards, like all these sports we had. And so then you're talking about, he's like all the same people from fifth grade on up. We were all on the same team. Like we all played together, pick up. We all did all the stuff. We played in multiple sports together. It was almost like we knew each other in every sense. Like I didn't even know there was AAU. Like one of my friends, PJ, was invited to do that. I didn't even understand that, like, because everything was within the context of folks you knew and you kind of played through and played in organized, recreational, whatever that was, or middle school. Like it was all through the school or some other.
Right. And so what's interesting about that, as I talked about the AAU piece, there also was the DBL League that was started by this woman, Laureline Jones, Black woman coach that looked out for Black students. And was trying to have her own league, and that was at Temple. So we would see John Chaney. It'd be nothing to see John Chaney. When I went back after I moved to Wisconsin, she was like, "Hey, Dawn, Wisconsin had one of the first African American women coaches before anybody else, Edwina Quarles." I was like, "What?" I didn't even know. So when they recruited me to come here, they didn't tell me my history, and my history was a Black woman that was a coach. And so
Wow.
I was like, Lord Lee knew. And so what was cool about that is I had a chance to interact with a lot of uh, great women coaches or
Mhm.
women that were a part of the early movements. So
Mhm.
Kathy Rush, who was a part of the Mighty Macs,
Yes.
Remy Portland, who coached at Penn State, was a Mighty Mac. Teresa
Mhm.
Grants, that was at Illinois, but before that, Rutgers was
Mhm.
Mighty Macs. We worked Kathy Rush camps in the summer, all through high school and college. Well, we went in high school, but worked it in college. So
Mhm.
I had the beautiful privilege to be a part of women's basketball history. I mean, Vivian Stringer was at Cheney.
Yes.
So, I really saw that, and I
Mhm.
was actually a part of that, and that
Mhm.
was nurtured in me as a high school athlete.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the mecca of cradle coaches of basketball in general, when you think about that whole corridor in Philadelphia, even on the men's side, just some of the Huey Brown, a lot of these folks who were over in those spaces going down towards New York, you're like just that whole corridor. Um,
Yep.
just like you were coming up in a really special time in basketball, and making that mark. So you go to Virginia. Uh,
Yeah. And so let me tell you a little bit though, like in high school, what was
yes,
interesting is I was always somebody that was all about the academics too.
yes,
And so the way I chose Virginia is I
yes,
wanted a university that also nurtured my academics. So for
yes,
me, I was looking for top 20, top 25, because by then I was
yes,
all American and I knew,
yeah,
I
yes,
could go somewhere.
yes,
And so I was really looking at that combination of academics and athletics. And
yes,
so, I did take a look at Stanford. I looked at some Ivies. And, we growing up working class in Philly. So with recruiting trips, they could pay for me, but not my parents. So I
mm,
was like, you know what? We gonna drive. So all
mm,
my trips we drove. So I didn't fly out west to go take a look anywhere because I was like, they were so much a part of what was going to happen for me next that they
mm,
needed to be by my side. So I wasn't going to make them figure out how to get the money together to go on
yes.
a recruiting trip. I was like, nope, there's enough great institutions right here. And I want y'all to be able to see me play. So driving distance was my thing.
I'm glad you hit on that because, you choose in Virginia, I mean, academics, right? And so, obviously you were, a very good student in high school
High
and
school valedictorian.
see, bring it on out.
Bring it out.
We put it. So, I mean, that sets your sights. And it's funny because my niece is a college basketball player. She plays Division I basketball and is trying to figure this whole thing out. And I always said, you need a Roxanne Shante this. I mean, the most important thing, what Roxanne Shante did, she had Warner paid for her up to her PhD. There, you can
Nice.
get experience, but also it's a great place to position you for life after your sport if you do it right, and especially when you go to an institution like Virginia. But going to Virginia is different than growing up in Philly, right? You coming from, so you come in, you going into a different kind of environment. What was it like to make that transition? I mean, obviously you're a great student, but again, it's Philadelphia, and you're going and spending time in a place that's a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is my dad was really concerned about my going. He grew up
Mm,
in South Carolina. And so
yes,
he's like, it's South. Why
yes.
you try to go below the Mason-Dixon line? You don't need to do that. And my mom was like, I don't know. Let's take a look. So as I
Yeah.
said, they went on all these visits. And so when they looked at the academic stature of the institution, and when they looked at the resource and support that they had for students and student athletes,
Yeah.
they were convinced.
Mm,
They had no concerns. They were like, it ain't gonna be, it's not me that's gonna say you can't go there. That is a
mm.
great school. And
Wow.
so I really appreciated their input and them be a part of that journey. And what I found is it had such a pipeline in New York and Philly.
Yes.
So, there was, yes, it has culture, it's Virginia, but there was quite a group of us that, were just going down 95 that were
Yeah.
going to UVA, Penn Charter High School from right outside of Philly. So there were a lot of people. And as it turns out, my women's basketball coach was from New Jersey. She went to
Mm,
Cyrus. And Gino Oriema recruited me, and he grew up
mm.
in Philly.
Okay.
And I never played for Gino because he went to Connecticut right after he he signed me.
Wow.
So I never played for him.
Wow.
So there was
There's so many connections here.
Yeah.
Crazy. You make that transition, and you're coming in as an All-American.
Mm-hmm.
So like most people, you in as the top dog in high school, but then you're coming in as a first-year player, into Virginia, and you're also coming at a time where also Virginia men's basketball, I think, there, and I mean, they're coming out after Sampson was on it, so there's a lot of buzz on that side as well. Coming in a really interesting culture. What was it like the first couple of years there at Virginia?
I'm glad you talked about that because two things. I wanted to go to a program that was solid, and they were on the rise, so they were in the top 20.
Yes.
So in my 4 years, I lost a total of, I believe, about 18 games across 4 years.
Yeah.
We were ranked as high as number 3 in the country.
Yeah.
In that time frame, we went to the NCAAs every year as far as the Elite 8. Yeah. So I knew I was joining a place that was already established, that I was going to have to wait my turn.
Yes.
Now, what was nice was my turn came quick.
Yes. I went to the archives. I started looking at, I was looking at down the box scores. They even got box scores there with your name and handwriting. I said, see, this is research. Which you did against Duke. I think you had a pretty good game against Duke your senior year, I believe.
I did.
Yeah. So
I don't even look at the box score. But I had to say, I knew I was going to a place where I was going to be learning from people that were good. I was going to get worked out. So they were going to get me ready. I mean, we had an All-American guard, Donna Holt from Chicago.
Yeah.
From DC. So, I was stepping into a legacy of sport. Mm-hmm. The other side of it was I was also stepping into a legacy of a women's coach who came through Title IX.
Yes.
Virginia, who said, I want what Terry Holland has.
Yes.
We're going to travel how they travel.
Yes.
So she opened up so many doors for us. She was right there on every fight for all the resources that we needed. And so more importantly, what I learned from the court was what I learned about how you negotiate and how you get what's due. And that's what she taught me.
Now, was she also the senior women's administrator, or was there another person?
No, there was another person. At that time, women's basketball, the coach could now just be the coach. They didn't have to teach.
Okay.
And she actually had an administrator as well. But that was, again, just for sports that were the revenue sports.
Yes.
So that was just women's basketball. Volleyball didn't have it like that. Softball didn't have it. Just basketball at that time.
And this is important because we're having a conversation about the evolution of kind of women's basketball, and and where I say it's on a trajectory right now is probably where men's basketball, and this is what I love to kind of get your perspective, was it in probably the mid 80s, because we're seeing about a lot of diversity of power in terms of where talent's coming from. For a long time we had a number of teams who are holding on and winning. You got winning a number of championships he's winning, and you got Stanford, you got Tennessee, you had these runs, these core groups, but now you're starting to see a lot of other programs. And with the evolution of AAU and just the talent, I mean, if people have not gone and seen AAU basketball played with these young ladies, you get a chance to see, like, you seeing the rise of a sport that's just exciting when you and so it wasn't a surprise to me to see what we saw this year in the tournament and the way games are being played. Even looking at the WNBA draft, there's so much talent. Now everybody can draft it. It was like wow. So like at the time you were coming, like you were at that point where there's a lot of momentum, because you had Louisiana Tech, you had USC, you had Tennessee, you had some household names that people would say are more crossover. People who weren't paying attention, but then came on the scene. I remember, like I told you, like Dawn Staley is like one of my favorite basketball players. Like I'm like, who is this? Like she like played with, like it was like the first time I heard Public Enemy when I saw her play. It's just like she played with a ferocity that just was like, I was like, every time y'all was on, they were on, I was watching. It's because it's one of those things. Y'all really rose up.
And we talk about, where you played. So in her neighborhood, she was playing with Hank Gathers and Bo Kemper.
Yes.
So we were playing with the male athlete counterpart that also was taking that next major step. So it makes sense that both were doing that. So what was cool about me recruiting Dawn and getting Dawn to come to UVA?
That's how I feel it. That's what I was gonna say. I was like, you said, I'm like you. I know you was recruiting.
I was. But what was cool about that was when she came, it was my senior year.
Yes.
So we were 5 freshmen that year in her class. And we went to the Elite 8, but we knew we had taken it where we could take it.
That's right.
And we knew with those 5, that was a time where people were in the recruiting games were saying to Tammy Reese and Dawn Staley, no, if Dawn goes there, you ain't gonna play. If Tammy go there, you ain't gonna play. And they were like, no, we go in there and we gonna play.
Like, that's right.
So that's when you saw those types of things happening. It wasn't one against another. People started realizing, especially in women's basketball, our team could do some work.
That's right.
So it was nice to see that. And so after I graduated in 1990, they went to the final game the next years. Yes. And I mean, obviously you're playing on a top program, and then you got this other side of your life, your academic life. And so, a lot of times I'm talking to students, you and I've talked about this, there's an athletic identity, and then there's the academic identity. At places like Virginia, Vanderbilt, some of these other places, you get to kind of weave those things together. It's just the way it's structured. And so how did you kind of find your academic interests and really nurture yourself on the academic side? Because that was one of the reasons why you chose Virginia. Like, how were you, and what kind of support, what kind of things, what kind of mentors did you have as you were trying to develop on the intellectual side in terms of academic side? Well, it's interesting. I think a big part of that too is my mom didn't go to college right after high school. Very smart, went to the, Philadelphia High School for Girls, which is the smartest high school. We had a little battle about that. And I was like, no, if I'm going to be smart, I can be smart wherever.
Yes, right.
But what I appreciated was she always, and my dad always talked about education and the importance of it. And when you put the ball down, you got to have something. And if you think about back then, women there was no WNBA. There was no ABL that had gotten started. You went overseas, but really, you ain't go overseas. No, people wasn't really going like they going now.
Yes.
And so I realized basketball was a means to my next step. It was not the end of my journey. And so the academic piece is what was going to set me up for become a secretary. Who knew? Right. But it was what was going to launch me. So sport was wonderful. I got, discipline and organization and teamwork and all those intangibles that, fuel how I'm able to finish this PhD while I'm a secretary of an agency, while I'm John and Danielle's mom, while I'm Elton's wife.
Yes, right.
You learn how to manage, compartmentalize, prioritize, figure out what you're doing. And then you realize the importance of relationships and connections. Yeah. And so my going to Virginia, the connections that I've made with people who are now attorneys and doctors and, people that are contributing to society, that's what we were about. Yeah. So the identity at Virginia wasn't just about the athletics. As an athlete there, you knew the academics was important to you as well. And so we were set up to nurture both.
Yeah. So you go, you play, short stint in Germany, and you start to work your way, back, work at Coca-Cola and kind of work your way back into coaching. Like, how did that process, how did you end up just kind of finding yourself back to the game in coaching after leaving Virginia?
Well, I think what happened is I went overseas professionally, and what you do when you're a professional athlete or internationally, you're allowed 2 foreign players. The mentality and the privilege of the U.S. makes you think that those 2 foreign players are Americans. They are not. They are 2 non-Germans.
Yes.
And so my other foreign player was Shuja from Hungary. So she was Hungarian. And so what was cool about that is we got to know each other. We didn't speak the same language. We spoke a bit of German by the end. But as the professional athlete, that is your job. So I had my own apartment. I played, but I had to create my life. And so I found that it was wonderful to explore. I'm glad I had the international experience, but I had a car and an apartment, and I was on a team in another country. So I was creating my life, and my other player was an American. So it wasn't like we were hanging out or doing stuff. So I created my life. And it was wonderful, but I felt like I was ready to get back and, really start life. So that corporate job with Coca-Cola was wonderful, but I was a territory sales manager. So I had a car, I had an apartment, but I was kind of on my own in my territory working. And I went to back in Virginia, work in my territory. And what I found in those 3 years is I enjoy the team approach. I like driving toward a goal. I wanted to make a difference in people's lives, and sport had brought so much to me that I thought I will do that through sport. But I also am a lifelong learner, so I wanted to go ahead and get that master's degree in education. So if I'm going to nurture, I wanted to do it with research behind it,
That's right.
with some strategy and skills. So I was very intentional.
So you end up you take on your first job. Was that Kentucky?
I was coaching at Penn State.
Penn State
as a grad
assistant. When you do it, and then you went to Kentucky.
But it was at the time where graduate assistants and coaches actually sued the NCAA.
Oh, okay.
And so it was these restricted earning coaches. So we were in this sort of restricted earning piece. So there were things as a graduate student I couldn't do and things as a coach I couldn't do. So it was a real tenuous time.
Wow.
And so I was a full-on assistant coach, and I was taking those graduate courses. And from there, I actually went to the University of Kentucky as a women's basketball coach and became recruiting coordinator actually right off the bat.
And when you think about kind of how obviously when you do recruiting, but you also have responsibility also on the floor and working with, what were some of the things that really informed some of your relationship with your players and how you approach coaching? Like how did your philosophy in coaching evolve based on what you work with players?
And what was interesting is that I never presented as somebody that was all basketball all the time. My story was always about basketball being a means to an end. And so when I worked with players, we talked about what they could do on the floor. But then my question off the floor was, so what's your major? What you thinking of doing? What career are you thinking about? When I recruited, and I think part of the reason I was a successful recruiter is because I talked about, again, sport being a means to an end. What is the big picture? What do you see your life becoming? And if you come here, this institution and me are going to help you reach that. So we're going to win some games and we're going to work along the way because I am a coach. But it's only for a time. And so you think about what you can accomplish in this time. How do you make the most of this experience? So we talked about being at donor events, how you talk to a donor, how you get that summer internship, how you set your life up for that next step.
And it's interesting because I've worked, engaged a number of athletes, and the way our women athletes approach those type of activities, they nuance it much more so than men athletes. I've talked to some former football players, and they said they just go there to those events and have food. Like the coaching up in those spaces and realizing that you are really connected to a global network in these spaces. And so when I remember talking to the women, they were like, you could tell the nuancing, the way they were thinking it through, and the guys were not thinking it through that way. And the importance of coaching and getting people to understand where you are and how you're positioned in those spaces is very important. So I'm glad I know that's something you always do. That's something you did with me. So when I was like, get me in space, So I already knew that was part of your coaching plan. So you go back to Penn State, and then you kind of make your way to Wisconsin. You got this stint as a coach. Penn State and Wisconsin, like both Big Ten. You back in here. What were those experiences like, and how did you then, from those experiences, move into this kind of Central America? Like you moved, people who know you, that's a pivot that would make sense. You could make that pivot, right? But it is a different kind of pivot that you made in your life. But can you talk a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, and what I will say is, when I coached at Kentucky, what I really realized is that situation, you talk about a culture shift, that situation was very different than a Virginia, than a Penn State.
Yes.
And part of it was, the academics was a little different. Mm-hmm. The southernness of it, it was very male, very gendered. Rick Pitino was the men's coach at that time.
Oh, you was out there with Rick Pitino.
I was there with Rick Pitino.
Oh, my goodness.
Fans, there was an allegiance, a loyalty, it was almost like, people would go visit Adolph Rupp's grave when they came to a Kentucky game. Yeah, that's where I was. Ooh. I also was at a place where we were second class. So even though we had court time for practice, if Rick wasn't done, we had to wait.
Had to wait.
So we were at a place where we flew out of Louisville and we took the 30-seater bus. They chartered from Lexington.
Wow.
And we were told, you need to be satisfied that y'all got scholarships, that y'all playing in this arena.
Wow.
So that's what I went to. I was like, wait. Whoa. And unfortunately, the coach, it was kind of her make or break year. Yeah. And she broke. She broke. Yeah. It didn't work. And so after watching those disparities and being a part of that and trying to figure out my voice, I had the opportunity to go back to Penn State, but I went back as an athletic fundraiser. And so being back at Penn State, where there was, Joe Paterno hired Reedy Portland, he understood equity, before it was, in fashion. Yeah. So, and Reedy was empowered to ask for equity. So it was a different model. Yes. And I realized that's the model I'm cut from.
Yes, that's what you cut from. Yes.
Yeah. And so I had met Elton then too. So, we were engaged. And so I was like, I'll go back to Penn State. He's working on his PhD. We'll see what happens. The athletic fundraising was working well. Yes. I was actually calling women's games on the radio as well.
Wow.
So I was able to kind of create that little niche.
Yeah.
Little media.
Yeah. We go, if you ever retire from the job, we're going to figure something out with RSG. I don't get in trouble, but we have to figure something out.
So what's interesting is that was also when Penn State joined the Big Ten. So that's what opened up the Midwest. Before then, I was kind of north and south. I had no real concept of the Midwest. And so I came out for the game, and Mary Murphy had left when I was a graduate assistant at Penn State. By the time I came back as a professional in fundraising, Jane Albright Dieterle had been hired. So when I came out to watch the team play, to call the game on the radio, I also was meeting with donors. Okay. I was meeting with alumni in this community. Okay. So I did the meeting, brought them to the game. After the game, interviewed Jane and said, hey, there was a transformation from Mary Murphy to you. What do you attribute it to? What has happened? That was it. That was our only connection.
Wow.
Back to Penn State, fundraising, doing what I do, playing softball, intramural softball team.
Yeah, but she knew.
And we get the call. Jane actually called the house. Elton answered the phone. And she flipped it on him. Would you consider moving to the Midwest? He was like, I'm from Chicago.
Elton was like, let's go.
Look, I come home, I'm like, what you talking about, Willis? You know?
He done negotiated your deal.
Right.
Guy right there, Elton. He done negotiated your deal.
But he's like, yeah, let's go take a look. I was like, I'm not even in coaching right now. He's like, but you should be. Let's go.
That's Elton. There he goes. Yes. Yes.
And it's funny because we played in the mural basketball too together, Elton and I, at Penn State. So I was the only girl there too.
Wow.
And then they tried to change.
Giving them buckets too. You giving them.
During playoffs, they tried to change the rules. It was like, no, it's all male. She can't play. Come on.
They tried to cut you out.
Oh.
They so glad you got the job at Wisconsin because they're like, this bucket, she got to go. They probably made a call.
Yeah. So that's how we ended up here. After that, I mean, literally, it was no more than 2 minutes in that interview. But Jane called Renee and said, the Dawn who interviewed me, who used to coach, why isn't she coaching? I want to talk to her. That's how it happened.
Wow. And then you came on over to Wisconsin to try to get the game going over here.
Yep.
Stuff going.
And we did it work.
Yes. Yes. I know they're trying to bring it back right now. So that's
they're trying.
They're working on right now. So I'm looking forward to them getting that back on track.
I am too.
As well. So you coach and then you make the shift into administration fully. What about like this journey helped prepare you for, the work that you were doing as a, special assistant to the chancellor and community work, like really where I met you, this all makes sense to me. I always knew this about, but this really makes sense to me now as someone who personally engaged with you in that role. But like, what were some of these things that you were able to bring into that position that really allowed you to transition into that more central campus role, like very visible?
Well, I would say it's really kind of, I have the big picture approach. Like I feel like everything is connected. Mm-hmm. So as I talked about working with those players and asking them what's next, I'm always thinking about what I'm exposed to and how that connects to what might be next. Mm-hmm. And so the way I transitioned from coaching, I realized the richness of Wisconsin. At that time, when I was coaching, the mayor was a woman, Mayor Bauman. Kathleen Falk was the county exec. Catherine Lyle was leading system. Deborah Masqual was the fire chief. So when I would recruit and I talk to families, I would say, you're coming to an excellent institution. You're going to get a great education. But your daughter is going to learn how to be a leader. Yes. Because we create leaders. Mm-hmm. Leaders go on and to lead big things. And then I just named that list of people. And I would say, so the experience that I'm going to help you get here is a well-rounded experience so that wherever you want to go next, you'll have some curiosity about it and an understanding of it. And that's how I coached. So when I would talk with families, that's what I would say. When I would bring in faculty from across campus to talk with our recruits, I was building my capacity of the campus. LNS, who wanted education, so those advisors, I was making sure I was interacting with when I was coaching. The foundation, those donors, I'm making those interactions. So I'm making those connections because I know, yes, I love sport, but it's a means to an end. It's not who I am, it's what I do. And so I knew there was more to this than just coaching. And so I think it was that kind of holistic approach and seeing that interconnectedness that enabled me to continue making those connections. Like when we recruited Nina Smith, #1 player in the country, at that dinner, I had Lamar Billups from the chancellor's office there. I had Vicki Washington, attorney from system, there because that family needed to see it wasn't just about athletics here. Their daughter was coming to a community of people that actually do the town and gown connection. I had people from Mount Zion there. And so I understood that big picture. And so I think when I left the bench, and moved into central administration, I took that big picture thinking. So that's why I was able to work with Lamar and do town and gown, work with the mayor, Dane County exec, anytime we got a federal grant, going overseas, meeting with workers to make sure our clothing is made in the best conditions. It's that understanding and caring that this work is more than just a work. It's connecting to something and improving something.
So, obviously you go from that role, you spend some time doing the external affairs work, which is similar to that, but you're pivoting then to, doing this work with the Department of Instruction, and now in your early role, which is much more public facing. It's that's a different space. What has that transition been like, when you kind of moved into this more public space? Now you're secretary and
yeah. What was interesting though was the chancellor work was pretty public space too, because it was community relations.
Yes.
I would say the difference is it's statewide.
Yes. So, I think that's what I was trying to capture. It's a little bit more statewide in that kind of, yes.
But I hearken it back to coaching.
Yes.
Because when you're recruiting, you're statewide.
Yes.
So when I'm meeting with the fire chief in La Crosse, I'm telling him Ashley Jofferson came from Onalaska.
Yes.
So, when I was coaching, and then when I was calling games on TV,
yes,
those are the connections. So I know about your community. I'm now here to help serve your community on behalf of Governor Evers in a safety and licensing way.
Yes.
So I feel like it's those connections.
Those connections.
I see them all being connected.
Yes. This is fascinating. One of the things I want to step back here, because see, this is why folks know that we're going to end up having another conversation. There's too much richness here. I had a list of questions. I haven't gone to those questions because we touched on so much good stuff. But I do want to kind of now contextualize this a little bit in kind of our current dynamics. You're working in a pandemic. We have multiple pandemics in terms of what's been happening around race and historical kinds of issues around our historical history, and whether it's work we're doing to think about the relationship between the community and law enforcement, or it's just these historical issues that have always been there, but we're beginning to lean into them as a nation, and we're doing this in the pandemic. And what's been fascinating about this is the role athletes have played. And I think it goes back to even your foundational work and talking about, why you kind of institutions you're looking for and like what really drives you. And especially the WNBA, I think in general, athletes, whether it's, some of our stars in soccer, in other areas, women athletes have been at the forefront of this discussion in many different ways. What has that felt like for you as someone who, if you and I are in the same age group, we've watched that transition from Billie Jean King to we watched the evolution, Title IX. We watched this groundswell, and now we're kind of seeing this thing beginning to come together in interesting ways where, you have someone who is also a player and an owner for the Atlanta Dream. You have, you have all these dynamics playing out. What has that meant for you to watch that? And also, obviously, you're participating. You are an example of what we're talking about. So, what has that meant to kind of watch this happen, and what has that meant for you in your own personal journey?
Well, it's been powerful because as you talk about witnessing it, as I mentioned, going to the University of Virginia and playing for a coach that was in those first scholarships, that was fighting for equity. You talk about Billie Jean King and, others. We've watched them. We've had a front row seat.
In Stringer, yes.
And we realize it doesn't end there because equality, we're still so far from it. When you think about the women's Final Four in the weight room scenario.
Oh my goodness.
So what happens is people talk a good game, but what we realize is it's the sweat equity that's going to get us there. Yes. And we have to use our voices to get us there. Mm-hmm. And so that's what you see. And what I was so proud of Dawn Staley when she,
oh my goodness,
she talked about it. She made it plain. She said, Everett, you talked about, getting through the pandemics and we in all this together and we're all going to make it through and it's about equity. And then you go and do this.
Yes.
So it's important to call people on
Yeah.
making sure that the walk matches the talk. And
Yes.
I am just so proud of the WNBA, all the females that are just doing just that. And,
Yeah.
on the heels of Kamala Harris, becoming a vice president,
Yeah.
it's like we're arriving. And I
Yes.
don't want to say we arrived because we
Yes.
haven't. We're
No.
arriving.
Mm.
And so what we're showing is equity is real.
Yeah.
We are qualified. We are prepared. And if the door isn't open, we're going to knock on it. We're going to open it up and we're going to let you know we belong here. We have something to contribute. And so I'm just very proud of, how this year has gone and the way women have stepped up for themselves. Because it's not just about us. It's about your little sister that's playing D1 basketball right now.
Yeah.
It's about all those other people, all those other little people that aspire, and they need to know that they can and they should, and that there's opportunity waiting for them.
Well, they're definitely listening to you. I mean, I just been blessed because of my niece's journey to like be in the space personally and just be around folks and see different things and just witness it up front and the impact of, the work that was done before and how they think about empowerment and how they So it's been powerful to watch happen and go on and to also watch you do what you're doing and know that you're not even done. This is like you got more to accomplish. You far from it. And I think probably one of the great decisions that Governor Evers made was getting you involved. I'm like, he was smart to do that and recruit because you're going to bring that noise and do some positive things for all the folks here in the great state of Wisconsin. I think people I always tell people when they said, "You've been in Wisconsin for a long time." I said, "There's some things you don't know about Wisconsin. It's got a really front porch feel. If you get your hands dirty and get out there and get to meet people, you'll run into some interesting people and have some real powerful relationships that'll be long lasting in places you would never thought you would have those relationships because there's so many assumptions that are made about what happens out the state. So you are proof of what can happen in the state. In closing, because I know I'm gonna bring you back. So I'm gonna act like you coming back. So I'm not gonna try and cover everything. But in closing, is what messages would you try to send to that young lady that's on the court right now, on the playground, in fifth grade, trying to prepare? What message would you like to share as they're trying to think about their future, or any young person? I would say that is trying to think about what that future looks like. What message would you want to send to them?
I think what's most important is do the thing you love. My parents didn't pick sport. I did. Mm-hmm. I have two kids who I introduced and exposed to sport who were not interested. I have a dancer and a musician, and that's fine. So lean into what it is that you are interested in, and then you'll find your way. Make sure that you talk with others about it, learn as much as you can about it so that you can be and do the good work that you want to do, that it's about your goals. Because my goals isn't their goal. And so it's important to know what kind of motivates you because sport is a lot of hard work. Mm-hmm. I know y'all see people on game day and it looks like a lot of fun. It is, but the hard work that goes into game day that you don't see, it's intense. It takes a lot of time, but it's well worth it. And so it's one of those kind of follow your dreams, and then get out of it what you need to get out of it.
Well, Secretary Crim, we thank you for blessing the stage and blessing the mic with us today on RSG Live here at the Lounge. Like I said, again, I look forward to having you back to go even deeper into this. I have other areas I want to dive into, but I just wanted to introduce you to our audience, so folks could just get a piece of what I get. I'm giving y'all a little bit of piece of what I get, and you have been blessed today to be able to see this. And I just want to wish you well in all your endeavors, and keep fighting the good fight. Keep pushing for folks and creating opportunities for everybody. That's the work today is how do we live up to the values we have as a country in terms of what's the fundamental things. And I think you do that every day you get up. You're trying to make sure there's a difference in making a difference. And I think a lot of that, I know for me, comes from these kind of experiences that we've had where we've had to win as a team. You couldn't do it on your own. You had to depend on other folks to make it happen if you're going to get to that goal. So we appreciate you being here and look forward to the next time you come back to the lounge. Take care. And for the rest of y'all, please go to realsportsguys.com. You get a chance to see great interviews like this and other ones that we've done. We got a lot of great content on there, and are pleased and just very excited that you are supporting us along the way. We are the little engine that could, but we're going to keep making it move. We'll keep moving it on down the road. It's because of you. And so until next time, this is Devon Wilson on Real Sports Guys at RSG Live at the Lounge. Take care.